Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Truth on the Tracks. I'm Brandon Turbeville. For those of you who are just joining us for the first time, you can catch Truth on the Tracks here every Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on ucy.tv. You can also catch the rebroadcast at ucy.tv on Friday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So the rebroadcast has been moved up to 10 p.m., which hopefully everybody should be used to by now. Again, if you're joining as a result of some of the flyers and or DVDs that have been passed out around the PD region, then a special welcome to you. If you have found this show as a result of that, maybe one of the websites that you visited linked in, that's good, and I encourage you, I invite you, I implore you to visit the websites that are listed on the flyers, and also to visit some of my websites. Of course, those of you who aren't familiar with me, I'm a staff writer for activistpost.com, and if you want to find my articles as they come out in real time, then you can go to activistpost.com and follow the things that are on the homepage there. Of course, that site's always a good place to be in any event. They cover lots of different topics. It's updated 24/7 at some point. New stories are always being posted. Now, if you're interested in my work, you can click on the Contributors tab, find my name under the Staff Writer section. You can find some of the more recent articles that I've written linked under my name. You can click on my name, and it will take you to the Activist Post archive section, and that will have or my specific archive section. That will have my articles for Activist Post there. I'm also the author of 4 books, and you can find those at falseflagpublications.blogspot.com, and has the pictures of the books, the list of the books, and buy now buttons if you want to go to the page. Click buy now. It doesn't charge you or anything, but it'll take you to the page so you can read a little bit about what the book is about, and check out the price of the book and that sort of thing if you're interested in purchasing it. You can also go through the bookpatch.com, but it might be easier to just go through falseflagpublications.blogspot.com. Now, if you're interested in my work specifically, then go to brandonturbeville.blogspot.com. Hopefully we'll get an actual domain name here in the future, but it's on the list of things to do, but the list far outweighs the money coming in. So if things change in that regard, then we will get a domain name, maybe brandonturbeville.com or something like that. I don't know what's available. I hope to be able to do that in the future, but as I said, the list of things that I need to do and I'd like to do far outweigh the money coming in, and that's largely because money's scarce right now all over the world, and we're going into austerity. So many of you who are listening in know what I'm talking about. Your taxes are going up, your benefits are going down, your prices are going up, and of course there's everything else to deal with as well, like the planned obsolescence of virtually everything you purchase, that you have to continually replace things that once lasted 30 years, now they last 30 days. Well, this is the reason why I'm working on such a limited budget. This is the reason why you have to type in brandonturbeville.blogspot.com. This is the reason why you have to do many extra steps to get to my work, and I wish it wasn't that way, but it is. And by and large, I'm the only person doing these things. So on my website specifically, when it comes in terms of my books, my websites, my articles, I don't have ghostwriters, obviously, and this is really me doing the show, and I don't have people handling the websites. I don't have people pimping out my books. I have to do all that myself, and so a lot of times things just don't get done. The payments coming in don't match up the amount of work. But not complaining, but it's just stating the facts. And again, of course, you have to deal with things like computer viruses, hacking, denial of service attacks, which really put me back a few days Actually, I'd say it put me back at least about a week in terms of the things that I had to do and the things that I couldn't do because of the stupid virus attacks and the stupid hackers. This was really something that put a monkey wrench into the operation here. And of course it doesn't stop. They know this. That's why they continue to do it, because they know if they harass you and just push you to your wits' end that eventually you're going to break and you'll just throw your hands up in the air and quit. Well, I'm still here for now, and we're going to continue to be here as long as we can. Now, last week I went over the part of the first degree in Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma. Now, for those of you who weren't here last week, Albert Pike is largely known as the Pope of modern Freemasonry. Pike was a Confederate general during the Civil War. He was probably the most popular promoter and developer of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry in recent history, and probably all of Freemasonic history. He's the most popularly known. He put out books. He has many books that have come out. Pike actually was involved in the Scottish Rite in Britain and, of course, Scotland, but also in Canada. And he promoted the lodge everywhere he went. Now, the thing about Pike, of course, I mentioned before. Last week I mentioned the letter to Mazzini, the famous British destabilization and intelligence operative of the 1800s, and the letter that Pike wrote to Mazzini where he predicted the First, Second, and Third World Wars. These sorts of things are important, of course, to know the issue of Freemasonry itself. I mentioned also last week that many people are either at one end of the spectrum or the other, in the sense that they either believe that Freemasonry is responsible for every evil in the world, and that Freemasonry is the pinnacle of the international global conspiracy, or they believe that Freemasonry is nothing but a good old boys club where guys get together, do good things for the community, and have a good drunken party every month. Well, neither of these things are right, although there's a little bit of truth to each of them. I mentioned before that many of the people who join the Freemason lodges are genuinely good people, and they do it for genuinely good reasons. They want to help out with the children's hospitals, they want to help out in charitable events, but also to have a sense of fraternity and brotherhood involved. And of course the drunken parties don't hurt either. It's a desire to belong. Of course they're lied to begin with. When they come in, they're told, whatever religion they are, they're told that it's based on that religion. Well, of course, the opposite is the truth. Freemasonry is not based on whatever religion you have when you come into it. Your religion is actually based on, to some extent, Freemasonry, because Freemasonry is nothing but a cover for another religion, a much older religion, a religion that predates Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. Far predates these, and you can find not Christian symbolism in Freemasonry, but Freemason symbolism in Christianity and all the other religions as well. So people are lied to when they come into these things, and generally the people who join the first three degrees, the apprentice, the fellowcraft, the master masons, if they come in it only for a charitable sense that they have, then generally they don't go any higher than that. And these three degrees, these lower Masonic degrees, are usually laughed at by the higher Masons because they're only a step above the profane. The profane, of course, being non-Masons. They're members of the little people, like us, who aren't members. But the lower degree Masons are laughed at. They usually don't go any higher. But individuals who join the Masonic lodges out of the knowledge, which it's public knowledge. I mean, it's just common knowledge that if you join the Mason lodges, then doors tend to open up for you. Windows open up for you. Windows of opportunity. Whether or not your business gets better contracts locally, and we can talk about small towns, small towns, community level, all the way to the big cities, to the international level of government. But it's well known that if you join the lodge, then you start to see an increase in customers, because these guys they agree to patronize one another. They'll get all the business from the Masons. you also do business with fellow Masons, and this sort of thing. They also know that other opportunities, or that whether it's job opportunities and connections in politics or connections in business, tend to just open up after you join the Masonic Lodge. So these are the things that are common knowledge, but the individuals who join the lodge for this purpose, well, they tend to move up at least a little higher, because this is the demonstration of some borderline psychopathic personality. Some may just be trying to be clever, but others may just be absolutely psychopathic, and those are the individuals who will move up higher, not only in Freemasonry, but will move up higher in politics, business, and whatever career or path they choose, because they don't mind stepping on other people underneath them. They don't mind cutting the throats of people who are standing in their way, or even who have helped them and have outlived their usefulness. It's also known that if you are, what's known within Masonic circles, if you are a first-generation Mason, you can only go so high. If you're a second-generation Mason, you can go higher still, but not all the way. If you're a third-generation Mason, then you can go all the way, especially if you have maintained the wealth. Because this is the idea. It's like eugenics, essentially. It's proving your worth genetically. If an individual can come into money and maintain that money, then he's proven something of himself. But if his children waste that money, if they drink it up, they snort it up, they gamble it away, then it shows a defect in the genetic traits. They're not worthy of the genetic lineage. But if they can maintain that wealth that the father accrued, by whatever manner, they can attain that wealth, they can keep that wealth, they can increase that wealth through generations, and they've proven their genetic worth. And of course, when I say go all the way, I'm not referring to the 33rd degree of Freemasonry, because the 33rd degree is only part of the story. There are lots of 33rd degree Masons out there. The Masonry actually goes to 360 degrees. And so, have you ever met a 360 degree Mason? Well, of course not, because this is not common knowledge. This is not going to be touted out in the public sphere. This is not even touted in the Freemason sphere itself. Of course, they also say that true Freemasonry, the true secrets of Freemasonry aren't even revealed to the 33rd degree Masons. You have to go higher still to start actually getting true secrets, true secret knowledge, right? The story, the line that's the popular line that's come out, that life begins at 40, and so does Freemasonry. Well, life begins at 40 is the line, but I added the so does Freemasonry part, because it's generally said that 40th degree is where you start getting the secrets, or around that portion, around that period. Of course, as I said, Freemasonry is nothing more than a cover for an older religion. I wouldn't necessarily call it the mystery religion, because this is something it's not a mystery at the higher levels. But again, I described the first 3 degrees of Freemasonry as they are represented in Morals and Dogma, which is the book by Albert Pike, and we read some of this on air last show. And I wanted to continue. We talked about the first degree, which is the apprentice degree, and we got through a couple sections. Now, if you haven't heard last week's show, then I encourage you to go to the archive sections again at ucy.tv. I forgot to mention earlier that this show, Truth on the Tracks, has a personal page. It's ucy.tv/TT for Truth on the Tracks. And there's YouTube versions of the show. There's also archived versions of the show that come up automatically. And there is, of course, a chat room there for you guys. If you're into that sort of thing, you can chat with each other as you're listening during the show. So hopefully you'll be able to access the archives of last week's show, and this might make a little more sense, but I don't have time to reread all of that. In fact, I've probably blabbered on enough in the beginning of this show. So I'd like to jump back into that. Again, this is Morals and Dogma of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, First 3 Degrees by Albert Pike. And I will jump back into where he's talking about the lodge, the Masonic Lodge. So it says, a lodge is defined to be an assemblage of Freemasons duly congregated, having the sacred writings, square and compass, and a charter or warrant of constitution authorizing them to work. The room or place in which they meet, representing some part of King Solomon's temple, is also called the lodge, and that is what we are now considering. It is said to be supported by 3 great columns: wisdom, force, or strength, and beauty. Wisdom, force, or strength, and beauty, represented by the master, the senior warden, and the junior warden. And these are said to be the columns that support the lodge, because wisdom, strength, and beauty are the perfections of everything, and nothing can endure without them. Because, the York Rite says, it is necessary that there should be wisdom to conceive, strength to support, and beauty to adorn all great and important undertakings. Now, of course, the three great columns Pike is representing here as wisdom, strength, and beauty. As I said last week, you have to bear in mind that this book, Morals and Dogma, was written, it was basically the handbook for the first 3 degrees of Freemasonry back in the 1800s. Now, with that being said, Pike is introducing these individuals to Freemasonry, but he's also not going to let them in on the higher secrets of Freemasonry, because they're only the first 3 degrees. These are essentially the initiate degrees. So, as I said last week, what happens is that individuals are told, and as I said earlier in the show, individuals are told these half-truths of what Freemasonry is. So the 3 pillars are actually something else, which we will, of course, get into in the future, but they're not wisdom, strength, beauty. This is how they're represented to the general public. This is how they're represented to the initiates. Of course, I should qualify saying that they're not wisdom, strength, or beauty. I should say that they're not wisdom, strength, or beauty in the way that they're represented here by Pike to the initiate. The definitions of these things are, of course, changed as you move up in the Masonic Lodge. So I hope that doesn't sound like it makes any sense at the time, but hopefully it will as we move on. Know ye not, says the Apostle Paul, that ye are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God dwelleth in you? If any man desecrate the temple of God, him shall God destroy, for the temple of God is holy, which temple ye are. So that's an interesting message to the individuals, the initiates reading this, right? If you desecrate the temple of God, him shall God destroy. The lodge is a temple, so that's a message. The wisdom and power of the deity are in equilibrium. The laws of nature and the moral laws are not the mere despotic mandates of his omnipotent will, for then they might be changed by him, and order become disorder, and the good and right become evil and wrong, honesty and loyalty vices, and fraud, ingratitude, and vice virtues. Omnipotent power, infinite and existing alone, would necessarily not be constrained to consistency. Its decrees and laws could not be immutable. The laws of God are not obligatory on us because they are the enactments of his power, or the expression of his will, but because they express his infinite wisdom. They are not right because they are his laws, but his laws because they are right. From the equilibrium of infinite wisdom and infinite force results perfect harmony in physics and in the moral universe. Wisdom, power, and harmony constitute one Masonic triad. They have other and profounder meanings that may at some time be unveiled to you. And that's what I was talking about a second ago. He says wisdom, power, and harmony constitute one Masonic triad, right? But they have other meanings. They have profounder meanings that may at some time be unveiled to you. Right? This is as you move up the degrees. So even the symbols that he's revealing here, the symbols that he's mentioning, the concepts that he's mentioning to the initiate, have much deeper levels of symbolism than what they're being given. So, again, bear that in mind as we go through this. As to the ordinary and commonplace explanation, it may be added that the wisdom of the architect is displayed in combining as only a skillful architect can do, and as God has done everywhere. For example, in the tree, the human frame, the egg, the cells of the honeycomb. It's a Masonic symbol. Strength with grace, beauty, symmetry, proportion, lightness, ornamentation. That, too, is the perfection of the orator and poet, to combine force, strength, energy with grace of style, music cadences, and beauty of figures, and play and irradiation of imagination and fancy. And so, in a state, the warlike and industrial force of the people, and their titanic strength, must be combined with the beauty of the arts, the sciences, and the intellect, if the state would scale the heights of excellence and the people be really free. Harmony in this, as in all the divine, the material, and the human, is the result of equilibrium of the sympathy and opposite action of contraries, a single wisdom above them holding the beam of the scales. To reconcile the moral law, human responsibility, free will, with the absolute power of God, and the existence of evil with his absolute wisdom and goodness and mercy, these are the great enigmas of the Sphinx. You entered the lodge between two columns. They represent the two which stood in the porch of the temple, on each side of the great eastern gateway. These pillars of bronze, 4 fingers breadth and thickness, were, according to the most authentic account, that in the first and that in the second book of Kings, confirmed in Jeremiah, 18 cubits high, with the capital 5 cubits high. The shaft of each was 4 cubits in diameter. A cubit is 1 foot and 707 1/1000ths. That is the shaft. That is, the shaft of each was a little over 30 feet 8 inches in height. The capital of each a little over 8 feet 6 inches in height. The diameter of the shaft 6 feet 10 inches. The capitals were enriched by pomegranates of bronze, covered by bronze network, and ornamented with wreaths of bronze, and appear to have imitated the shape of the seed vessel of the lotus or Egyptian lily, a sacred symbol to the Hindus and Egyptians. The pillar or column on the right, or in the south, was named, as the Hebrew word is rendered in our translation of the Bible, Jachin, and that on the left, Boaz. Our translators say that the first word means, he shall establish, and the second, in it is strength. These are, of course, the pillars that are mentioned in the Old Testament, Jachin and Boaz in Solomon's temple. Again, but the pillars did not come from the Old Testament. The Old Testament pillars came from the religion that Freemasonry is attached to, that it predated Judaism. This is something that came in with Judaism, but it was before Judaism. Judaism came after the religion that established the pillars. It's also interesting, too, that the two pillars, Jachin and Boaz, collapsed on September 11th, 2001. The South Tower and the North Tower. The South Tower, of course, was Jachin, and the North Tower was Boaz. So there's some symbolism there that some people may have missed. These columns were imitations by Kurum, the Tyrian artist, of the great columns consecrated to the winds and fire at the entrance to the famous temple of Malkarth in the city of Tyre. It is customary in lodges of the York Rite to see a celestial globe on one and a terrestrial globe on the other, but these are not warranted if the object be to imitate the original 2 columns of the temple. The symbolic meaning of these columns we shall leave for the present unexplained, only adding that entered apprentices keep their working tools in the column Jachin, and giving you the etymology and literal meaning of the 2 names. Now, this is where it's going to become a little difficult for me to convey to you what he's doing, where you need to get his book, Morals and Dogma of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, First 3 Degrees, so you can see the writing here, right? Because he says the word Jachin in Hebrew, and he writes it here. There's no way for me to describe what this is, what this looks like. It's Hebrew writing of Jachin. It was probably pronounced Yakin, and meaning as a verbal noun, he that strengthens, and thence firm, stable, upright. The word Boaz, okay, and he represents that. Baz means strong, strength, power, might, refuge, source of strength, a fort. The prefix means with or in, and gives the word the force of the Latin gerund roborando, or strengthening. The former word also means that he will establish or plant in an erect position, from the verb kun, he stood erect. It probably meant active and vivifying energy and force, and Boaz, stability, permanence, in the passive sense. Dimensions of the lodge, our brethren of the York Rite, that these also are towers. They represent towers of something else too. But I will do as Albert Pike for now, and I will leave that for later. The dimensions of the lodge, our brethren of the York Rite say, are unlimited, and its covering no less than the canopy of heaven. To this object, they say, the Mason's mind is continually directed, and thither he hopes at last to arrive by the aid of the theological ladder which Jacob in his vision saw ascending from earth to heaven, the three principal rounds of which are denominated faith, hope, and charity, which admonish us to have faith in God, hope in immortality, and charity to all mankind. Accordingly, a ladder, sometimes with 9 rounds, is seen on the chart resting at the bottom of the earth, its top in the clouds, the stars shining above it, and this is deemed to represent that mystic ladder which Jacob saw in his dream set up on the earth, and the top of it reaching to heaven, with the angels of God ascending and descending on it. The addition of the 3 principal rounds to the symbolism is wholly modern and incongruous. The ancients counted 7 planets thus arranged: the Moon, Mercury, Venus, the Sun, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. There were 7 heavens and 7 spheres of these planets. And all the monuments of Mithras are 7 altars or pyres, consecrated to the 7 planets, as were the 7 lamps of the golden candelabrum in the temple. See what the religions are based on? I'll repeat it. There were 7 heavens and 7 spheres of these planets. On all the monuments of Mithras are 7 altars or pyres consecrated to the 7 planets, as were the 7 lamps of the golden candelabrum in the temple. That these represented the planets, we are assured by Clemens of Alexandria and his Stramata, and by Philo Judaeus. We're going to talk a little bit more about this when we come back, but we've got to pause right now for station identification. Ladies and gentlemen, stick with us. We'll talk more about this on the other side. We'll be right back.
Thank you for listening to UCY.TV. I'm Jim Funky, the host of Boiler Room Radio. Join me every Wednesday night at 10 Eastern here on UCY.
The brink. We are on the brink, but of what? No one knows. It depends on the reference frame that you're looking at it from. On the Brink with Jeff Weverson.
We have been nuked. Did you know that? Check out Nuked Radio on UCY.TV Tuesdays and Thursdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Radchik and Jules. Stay safe, everyone. We have been nuked. Did you know that? Check out Nuked Radio on UCY.TV Tuesdays and Thursdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Radchik and Jules. Stay safe, everyone.
This is Ozzy Skateboard, and you're listening to UCY.TV.
Catch Before the First Cup with Jules, Monday through Friday, 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time at UCY.TV/BTFC.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Truth on the Tracks. I'm Brandon Turbeville. We were talking in the previous segment, again going through some of Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, first 3 degrees, talking about the first degree, the apprentice degree. And I mentioned last week, and I mentioned earlier on in this show, how Freemasonry is an expression of a religion, of a very old, very ancient religion, although the people at the lower degrees have no bloody idea what that religion is. Even as they move up, it's hard for them to understand until you get to the pinnacle, the top, where the more illuminated ones are there, more enlightened ones, perhaps. But this religion, it's not really a mystery religion, but this religion has its roots, I guess you could say it predates the mystery religions. But it certainly predates the 3 big religions that we have today, which is Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. And I mentioned the last paragraph that I read before we went to break. One more time, I think it bears reading, because this is essentially showing that it wasn't that Freemasonry is not based on Christian, Islamic, or Judaic symbols. Christian, Islamic, or Judaic symbols are based on Freemason symbols. Of course, Freemason symbols are based on another religion entirely. And I think it's important for us to try and search out the information that's being kept from us. What is this that's being kept from us? The word occult, of course, doesn't mean bad or satanic. It's 2 different things. The word occult simply means hidden or secret. So occult can be either good or bad. At this point, I think it's important for us to try our best to find out what is hidden from us, because I would like to know the truth one way or the other, regardless of the consequences of knowing. I would prefer to know. But the word occult has received so many negative connotations through misinterpretations and poor scholarship throughout the years. That doesn't mean, of course, that I'm saying that somebody should join these lodges. If somebody is curious as to what Freemasonry teaches, then I recommend you get books like this, the older books by people like Albert Pike, to go over the lodges and talk about, where they talk about what the symbols represent and so forth. You'll get more out of these books than you will in the lodge. And if you read these books, then you're not compromised. So you join the lodge, you take a blood oath, and they're very serious about these blood oaths. So if you go to speak out about what you know, then you are certainly just endangering yourself for that purpose. So again, you're compromised when you join these lodges. So I would encourage anyone who's considering trying to infiltrate Freemasonry to rethink that purpose, rethink that idea, and abandon it, and move on to other things. If you're interested in what Freemasonry teaches, then here's a starting point: Morals and Dogma of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, first 3 degrees, by Albert Pike. If you can't find it in a local bookstore, then just go to Amazon or some other online book retailers, and you can find it. Sometimes it's kind of pricey to get these books, but sometimes you can find a good deal. So back to what I was saying about how the ancient religion, the ancient religious symbols have infiltrated not infiltrated, but have been handed down and simply transformed slightly, or just transmitted into the religions that we know today. I'll read back from Albert Pike, where we finish off in the first half of the show. The ancients counted 7 planets thus arranged: the Moon, Mercury, Venus, the Sun, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. There were 7 heavens and 7 spheres of these planets. On all the monuments of Mithras are 7 altars or pyres consecrated to the 7 planets, as were the 7 lamps of the golden candelabrum in the temple. That these represented the planets we are assured by Clemens of Alexandria in his Stromata and by Philo Judaeus. To return to its source in the infinite, the human soul, the ancients held, had to ascend as it had ascended through the seven spheres. The ladder by which it reascends has, according to Marsilius Ficinus in his commentary on the Aeneid of Plotinus, 7 degrees or steps. And in the mysteries of Mithras, carried to Rome under the emperors, the ladder with its 7 rounds was a symbol referring to this ascent through the spheres of the 7 planets. Jacob saw the spirits of God ascending and descending on it, and above it the deity himself. The Mithraic mysteries were celebrated in caves, where gates were marked for the equinoctial and solstitial points of the zodiac. And the 7 planetary spheres were represented, which souls must traverse in descending from the heavens of the fixed stars to the elements that envelop the earth. The 7 gates were marked, one for each planet, through which they pass in descending or returning. We learn this from Celsus, an Origen, who says that the symbolic image of this passage among the stars, used in Mithraic mysteries, was a ladder reaching from earth to heaven, divided into 7 steps or stages, to each of which was a gate, and at the summit an 8th one, that of the fixed stars. The symbol was the same as that of the 7 stages of Borsippa, the pyramid of vitrified brick near Babylon, built of 7 stages, and of each a different color. In the Mithraic ceremonies, the candidate went through 7 stages of initiation, passing through many fearful trials, and of these the high ladder with 7 rounds or steps was the symbol. You see the lodge and its details and ornaments by its lights. You have already heard what these lights, the greater and lesser, are said to be, and how they are spoken of by our brethren in the York Rite. The Holy Bible, square, and compasses are not only styled the great lights in masonry, but they are also technically called the furniture of the lodge. And as you have seen, it is held that there is no lodge without them. This has sometimes been made a pretext for excluding Jews from our lodges, because they cannot regard the New Testament as a holy book. The Bible is an indispensable part of the furniture of a Christian lodge, only because it is sacred book of the Christian religion. The Hebrew Pentateuch in a Hebrew lodge, and a Koran in a Mohammedan one, belong on the altar. And one of these, the square and compass properly understood, are the great lights by which a Mason must walk and work. So if you've ever been approached about joining the Mason Lodge, and you're a Christian, and you were told that it's all based on Christianity, ask yourself, well, why is there a Muslim one? Why is there a Jewish one? If it's all based on Christianity, shouldn't they all be Christian lodges? It's not. It's based on something else. The obligation of the candidate is always to be taken on the sacred book or books of his religion, and he may deem it more solemn and binding, and therefore it was that you were asked of what religion you were. We have no other concern with your religious creed. We have no other concern with your religious creed. I thought it was a Christian lodge. That was based on Christianity. The square is a right angle formed by 2 right lines. It is adapted only to a plane surface and belongs only to geometry, earth measurement, and that trigonometry which deals only with planes and with the earth, which the ancients supposed to be a plane. The compass describes circles and deals with the spherical trigonometry, the science of the spheres and heavens. The former, therefore, is an emblem of what concerns the earth and the body, the latter of what concerns the heaven and the soul. That the compass is also used in plane trigonometry as in erecting perpendiculars, and therefore you are reminded that although in this degree both points of the compass are under the square, and you are now dealing only with the moral and political meaning of the symbols, and not with their philosophical and spiritual meanings, still the divine ever mingles with the human. With the earthly, the spiritual intermixes, and there is something spiritual in the commonest duties of life. The nations are not bodies politic alone, but also souls politic. And woe to that people which, seeking the material only, forgets that it has a soul. Sound familiar? Then we have a race petrified in dogma, which presupposes the absence of a soul and the presence only of memory and instinct, or demoralized by lucre. Such a nature can never lead civilization. Genuflection before the idol or the dollar atrophies the muscle which walks and the will which moves. Hieratic or mercantile absorption diminishes the radiance of a people, lowers its horizon by lowering its level, and deprives it of that understanding of the universal aim, at the same time human and divine, which makes the missionary nations. A free people, forgetting that it has a soul to be cared for, devotes all its energies to its material advancement. If it makes war, it is to subserve its commercial interests. Citizens copy after the state and regard wealth, pomp, and luxury as the great goods of life. Such a nation creates wealth rapidly and distributes it badly. Apologize for my choppy reading. Thence the two extremes of monstrous opulence and monstrous misery, all the enjoyment to a few, all the privations to the rest, that is to say, to the people, privilege, exception, monopoly, feudality, springing up from labor itself, a false and dangerous situation, which making labor a blinded and chained cyclops in the mine, at the forge, in the workshop, at the loom, in the field, over poisonous fumes, in miasmatic cells and unventilated factories, founds public power upon private misery, and plants the greatness of the state in the suffering of the individual. There is a greatness ill constituted, in which all the material elements are combined, and to which no moral element enters. If a people, like a star, has the right of eclipse, the light ought to return. The eclipse should not degenerate into night. This does, in fact, sound very familiar, should it not? If you have any concept, any understanding of current affairs and current society. The three lesser or the sublime lights you have heard are the sun, the moon, and the master of the lodge. And you have heard what our brethren of the York Rite say in regard to them, and why they hold them to be lights of the lodge. But the sun and moon do in no sense light the lodge, unless it be symbolically, and then the lights are not they, but those things of which they are the symbols. Of what they are the symbols, the Mason in that rite is not told, nor does the moon in any sense rule the night with regularity. The sun is the ancient symbol of the life-giving and generative power of the deity. To the ancients, light was the cause of life, and God was the source from which all light flowed, the essence of light, the invisible fire, developed as flame, manifested as light and splendor. The sun was his manifestation and visible image, and the Sabians worshipping the light, God seemed to worship the sun, in whom they saw the manifestation of the deity. The moon was the symbol of the passive capacity of nature to produce, the female, of which the life-giving power and energy was the male. It was the symbol of Isis, Astarte, and Artemis, or Diana. The master of life was the supreme deity above both and manifested through both. Zeus, the son of Saturn, become king of the gods. Horus, son of Osiris and Isis, become master of life. Dionysus or Bacchus, like Mithras, become the author of light, life, and truth. So here again, Pike is telling you that the symbols of Freemasonry, of course, are rooted in ancient symbols. Of course, he's not going very far into this, but the symbols again of Isis. Of course, all these deities, Isis and so forth, are only representations of something else. Themselves were a cover for something else. Let's move on to another section. Still talking about the apprentice degree. First degree. The master of light and life, the sun and the moon, are symbolized in every lodge by the master and wardens. And this makes it the duty of the master to dispense light to the brethren by himself and through the wardens who are his ministers. Thy sun, says Isaiah to Jerusalem, shall no more go down, neither shall thy moon withdraw itself. For the Lord shall be thine everlasting light, and the days of thy mourning shall be ended. Thy people also shall be all righteous, they shall inherit the land forever. Such is the type of a free people. Our northern ancestors worshipped this triune deity: Odin, the Almighty Father; Freya, his wife, emblem of universal matter; and Thor, his son, the mediator. But above all these was the supreme God, the author of everything that existeth, the eternal, the ancient, the living and awful being, the searcher in the concealed things, the being that never changeth. The temple of Eleusis, the sanctuary lighted only by a window in the roof and representing the universe. The images of the sun, moon, and Mercury were represented. The sun and moon, says the learned brother Delaunay, represent the two grand principles of all generations, the active and passive, the male and the female. So you have these sort of opposites, these apparent contradictions, the opposites of one another, male and female, light and dark, that sort of thing. So Delaunay says the sun and moon represent the two grand principles of all generations, the active and passive, the male and the female. The sun represents the actual light. He pours upon the moon his fecundating rays. Both shed their light upon their offspring. The blazing star, or Horus, and the three form the great equilateral triangle, in the center of which is the omnific letter of the Kabbalah, by which creation is said to have been effected. This is back to Pike. The ornaments of a lodge are said to be the mosaic pavement, the indental tessel, and the blazing star. The mosaic pavement, checkered in squares or lozenges, is said to represent the ground floor of King Solomon's temple, and the indented tessel, that beautiful tessellated border which surrounded it. The blazing star, the checkerboard floor, of course, it's white and black, and it represents, again, the opposites, light and dark. The blazing star in the center is said to be an emblem of divine providence and commemorative of the star which appeared to guide the wise men of the east to the place of our Savior's nativity. But there was no stone seen within the temple. The walls were covered with planks of cedar, and the floor was covered with planks of fir. There is no evidence that there was such a pavement or floor in the temple, or such a bordering. In England, anciently, the tracing board was surrounded with an indented border, and it is only in America that such a border is put around the mosaic pavement. The tesserae, indeed, are the squares or lozenges of the pavement. In England, also, the indented or denticulated border is called tessellated because it has 4 tassels, said to represent temperance, fortitude, prudence, and justice. It represents other things, too. It was termed the indented tassel, but this is a misuse of words. It is a tesserated pavement with an indented border around it. The pavement, alternately black and white, see, checkerboard, symbolizes, whether so intended or not, the good and evil principles of the Egyptian and Persian creed. It is the warfare of Michael and Satan, of the gods and titans, of Balder and Lok, between light and shadow, which is darkness, day and night, freedom and despotism, religious liberty and the arbitrary dogmas of a church that thinks for its votaries and whose pontiff claims to be infallible, and the decretals of its councils to constitute a gospel. The edges of this pavement, if in lozenges, will necessarily be indented or denticulated, toothed like a saw, and to complete and finish it, a bordering is necessary. It is completed by tassels as ornaments at the corners. If these and the bordering have any symbolic meaning, it is fanciful and arbitrary. To find in the blazing star of 5 points an allusion to the divine providence is also fanciful. And to make it commemorative of the star that is said to have guided the Magi is to give it a meaning comparatively modern. Originally it represented Sirius, or the dog star, forerunner of the inundation of the Nile. Now, I want to repeat this again because this just goes to show what I just said. The blazing star, to give it the meaning, as some people may be told, that it's the star that guided the Magi. It's not. It's so much older. That Pike says to do that is to give it a meaning comparatively modern, meaning Christian. It has nothing to do with it. It represents Sirius, the dog star, the forerunner of the inundation of the Nile, the god Anubis, companion of Isis in her search for the body of Osiris, her brother and husband. Then it became the image of Horus, the son of Osiris himself, symbolized also by the sun, the author of the seasons and the god of time, son of Isis, who was the universal nature, himself the primitive matter, inexhaustible source of life, spark of uncreated fire, universal seed of all beings. It was Hermes also, the master of learning, whose name in Greek is that of the god of Mercury. It also became the sacred and potent sign of character of the Magi, the Bentalpha, and is significant emblem of liberty and freedom, blazing with a steady radiance amid the weltering elements of good and evil, of revolutions, and promising serene skies and fertile seasons to the nations after the storms of change and tumult. It's also important to note that revolutions here is in a capital letter, revolution. And it's well known, well admitted that Masonry is influential, is instrumental in creating revolutions. The French Revolution was entirely Masonically inspired. In the east of the lodge, over the master, enclosed in a triangle, is the Hebrew letter Yod, and this is the designation of the Hebrew writing. But you can't see that unless you get the book. In the English and American lodges, the letter G is substituted for this as the initial of the word God, with as little reason as if the letter were D, an initial of Dio or Dieu, which was used in the French lodge instead of the proper letter. So the G enclosed in the triangle, right? But the triangle could be the compass and the square. This compass and the square create the triangle. This is also as if the so-called Star of David, the Israeli star, which is really a symbol of as above, so below, but the triangle pointing down, a triangle pointing up. So with the letter G, it is the Hebrew letter, but it's designated the Yod, but it's represented by the G. Yod is in the Kabbalah the symbol of unity, of the supreme deity, the first letter of the holy name, and is also a symbol of the great Kabbalistic triads. So again, you have G, the symbol of unity, in the midst of the symbol of saying as above, so below, unifying both above and below. That's what the Yod is doing. To understand its mystic meanings, you must open the pages of the Sohar and Sifra de Zeniutha and other Kabbalistic books and ponder deeply on their meaning. It must suffice to say that it is the creative energy of the deity is represented as a point, and that point in the center of the circle of immensity. It is to us in this degree the symbol of that unmanifested deity, the Absolute, who has no name. Our French brethren placed this letter Yod in the center of the blazing star, and in the old lectures our ancient English brethren said, the blazing star or glory in the center refers us to that grand luminary, the sun, which enlightens the earth and by its genial influence dispenses blessings to mankind. They called it also in the same lectures an emblem of prudence. The word prudentia means, in its original and fullest signification, foresight. And accordingly, the blazing star has been regarded as an emblem of omniscience, or the all-seeing eye, which to the Egyptian initiates was the symbol of Osiris, the creator. With the Yod in the center, it has the Kabbalistic meaning of the divine energy manifested as light, creating the universe. The jewels of the lodge are said to be 6 in number. 3 are called movable and 3 immovable. The square, the level, and the plum were anciently and properly called the movable jewels because they pass from one brother to another. It is a modern innovation to call them immovable because they must always be present in the lodge. The immovable jewels are the rough ashlar, the perfect ashlar or cubical stone, or in some rituals, the double cube, and the tracing board or trestle board. Of these jewels, our brethren of the York Rite say, the square inculcates morality, the level equality, and the plum rectitude of conduct. Their explanation of the immovable jewels may be read in their monitors, and of course, this is they also represent something else, and you'll find what that is as you move up the degrees of Freemasonry. I'm going to have time for one more section here if I can get it in. Our brethren of the York Rite say that there is represented in every well-governed lodge a certain point within a circle, the point representing an individual brother, the circle, the boundary line of his conduct beyond which he is never to suffer his prejudices or passions to betray him. This is not to interpret the symbols of Masonry. It is said by some, with a nearer approach to interpretation, that the point within the circle represents God in the center of the universe. It is a common Egyptian sign, common Egyptian sign for the sun and Osiris, and is still used as the astronomical sign of the great luminary. In the Kabbalah, the point is Yod, the creative energy of God, irradiating with light the circular space which God, the universal light, left vacant, wherein to create the worlds by withdrawing his substance of light back on all sides from one point. Our brethren add that this circle is bordered by two perpendicular parallel lines representing St. John the Baptist and St. John the Evangelist, and upon the top rest Holy Scriptures, an open book. And going around this circle, they have Masonic Bibles, by the way, which all the presidents have sworn in on. All the U.S. presidents swear in on Masonic Bibles. Now they say Obama didn't because he swore in on Lincoln's the Bible that Lincoln used. Well, perhaps Lincoln swore in on a Masonic Bible as well. They don't tell you that. That's from what I know he did. So back to Pike. In going around the circle, they say we necessarily touch upon these two lines as well as upon the Holy Scriptures. And while a Mason keeps himself circumscribed within their precepts, it is impossible that he should materially err. It would be a waste of time to comment upon this. Some writers have imagined that the parallel lines represent the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn, which the sun alternately touches upon at the summer and winter solstices. But the tropics are not perpendicular lines, and the idea is merely fanciful. The parallel lines ever belonged to the ancient symbol that had some more recondite and more fruitful meaning. They probably had the same meaning as the twin columns Jachin and Boaz. That meaning is not for the apprentice. You see, he's telling you that neither of the previous interpretations for the symbol of the lines are accurate. And of course the meaning is known, but that's not to be told to you, the apprentice, the first degree Mason. That's for higher Masons. The adept may find it in the Kabbalah. The justice and mercy of God are in equilibrium, and the result is harmony, because a single and perfect wisdom presides over both. The Holy Scriptures are an entirely modern addition to the symbol. The Holy Scriptures are an entirely modern addition to the symbol, like the terrestrial and celestial globes on the columns of the portico. Thus, the ancient symbol has been denaturalized by incongruous additions like that of Isis sweeping over the broken column containing the remains of Osiris and Byblos. Now, I'm not going to be able to go any further tonight in this because we're about to run out of time, but he's pretty clear here in what he says in terms of the nature of religion and the connections between that and Freemasonry. And the mention of the Kabbalah, of course, is a sort of aside to study to show thyself approved. If you want to know, then do the work, go to the Kabbalah, and of course, somebody who is that dedicated will move up much faster than somebody who just takes what they hear at the initial meetings. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're actually out of time for tonight. I want to encourage you to come back next week. We're going to continue more on Morals and Dogma by Albert Pike. Again, Monday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Friday night, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the rebroadcast here on UCY.TV. Show's personal page, UCY.TV/TT for Truth on the Tracks. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to the show tonight. We hope you're going to come back next week. We're going to continue the discussion of Albert Pike and Morals and Dogma. We'll see you next week.